31st of October. Halloween, time for a story. Now, this is a true story, and I would ask that you listen to the end because there is a warning. I was a military nurse, and my first posting was to Tidworth, down on the Salisbury Plains. Because I was in transit, I was in a shared room. Learner nurses were supposed to be in separate rooms so that they could have peace to study. But if you're in transit, you could share. And I was in a beautiful, big, airy room right at the top of the building. You had to go up lots of corridors and stairs to get to it. And I was sharing with a girl called Angie. We'll call her Angie for the sake of the story. Not her real name. She was a nice girl, very gentle, very quiet, very studious. My best friend at the time was somebody called Pam, and she was in one of the downstairs rooms, which were awful little hutches. Basically, large rooms had been segmented out by somebody wanging up a bit of hardboard and putting a few doors in. Well, not long after we'd arrived in Tidworth, one night about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up by somebody coming into our room. Sort of opened my sleepy eyes and I saw somebody by the door, female. No surprises there because nurses' accommodation was certainly out of bounds to males. She was wearing a large white apron and a large white cap. Military nurses didn't wear the linen aprons, and student nurses did not wear the large caps. However, I had come from a civilian hospital where we did wear white linen aprons and large caps, so I wasn't surprised. I asked her who she was, but she didn't reply. Instead, she walked towards my bed, stood over me, and smiled. By now I was fully awake and wondering what was going on and why the stranger was in our room. So I turned the light on using the pull cord over my bed. And as I did so, she disappeared. She just faded away. It took me a second or two to comprehend what had happened and to realise that she had in fact walked through both my dressing table and linen bin to stand over me. So also at that point it dawned on me that her uniform was out of context. So by the time the thought process had kicked in, I was wide awake and shaking my roommate to wake her up. And once she was fully awake and I'd repeated the story to her several times, she didn't believe me. She actually thought that maybe I'd had too many alcoholic drinks before going to bed. I assured her I hadn't been near a bar and insisted that she come downstairs to see my friend Pam. There was no way that I was going to go down those stairs and corridors on my own. Well, eventually she conceded and down we went. When we got downstairs, we could see a light shining through the little pane of glass above the door frame of Pam's room. So I knocked on the door and she answered straight away, asking who it was. When we said it was us, she asked us to go in. Before telling her the story of what had occurred in our room, I asked Pam why she was still awake at that time in the morning. And she told us that the night before she'd had a visit by a nurse wearing an apron and large cap, and that this person had walked through some of her furniture, bent over, and smiled at her. Now, as you can imagine, Angela thought that we had dreamt up some elaborate hoax to tease her. I think she did eventually believe that what had transpired had transpired. And here comes the warning. The following day, we discovered that some of the soldiers down the road had been playing around with an Ouija board. On both nights that we'd been visited, so on the night that I'd been visited, but also the previous night when Pam had been visited. We also discovered that in the past nurses had played around with an Ouija board in the house that we slept in, and that on several occasions a child had come through. This led us to wonder if our nurse was in fact a nursemaid rather than a nurse. The warning: do not play around with Ouija boards. It may not be you who gets the visit, and not all spirits are friendly. If you would like to know more about my stories and how you can develop your abilities, the story is in my book, Do You Want to Be a Healer / Psychic, which is available on Amazon. And the author's name is Elizabeth R. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have an amazing, wonderful Halloween.